Welcome into Brave Central. Barrett, Sallee, Dimino with you, getting you caught up on all things Atlanta Braves. And Chris, obviously, the battle at Bristol was the Speedway Classic was one of those that I think not any of us expected, but now the boys are back in town. The Bats obviously went a little silent last night against the Brewers. I think for me, and kind of Snit alluded to this after the game, sometimes you just have to tip your hat to a good pitcher. Quinn Priester, top 4%. I'm sorry, he's fourth overall in ground ball percentage, and he induced a lot of ground balls. So he's been doing what he did all year. He did it to the Braves again.
He knows what he is. He pitches to that. There are certain guys, and he's young, but I think there are certain guys that don't give in. I'm not giving in this at-bat. I know what I want you to do, and, my goal, my job is to have you do it. And I thought he was really good last night. For a guy who we had talked about, you had a couple of teams that had a chance to keep him and didn't. Pittsburgh drafts him. Boston sells him basically in April. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be maybe the best pickup in 2025 that nobody will ever talk about because it wasn't a trade deadline deal. Nobody knew the guy's name. And all of a sudden you go 11-2. And I don't care if you don't like wins. That was his 16th start. So he's learning how to pitch in the major leagues, but he's learned that he's got a team behind him that will play good enough defense. They will find a way to score. And look, if you want to play the moral victory, I kind of said 4 runs in 5 innings for Fetty is what I'm expecting. If I get a little bit less, fine. And he was a little bit less last night for a team that was hot as offensively as hot as anybody with 56 hits in 3 games coming off the weekend sweep of the Nationals. You slowed them down. I think the other thing you found out about them, and I do want to talk to Pat Murphy about this tonight because he's been around. He's been around the college game. This guy worked his way up to be in this job. It's a copycat world, and I don't know how many teams could play like Milwaukee does. Let's be athletic. Let's run. Let's put the ball in play. Let's make contact, but also let's be patient. That's the most patient baseball team I've ever seen for a team that's 23 games over 500. They don't rely on a home run. They rely on, I'll string 3 together. I'll string 3 in an inning. And all of a sudden you go, that's a run. That's 2. Now we got 5. And that's the type of baseball team they are. I don't know who could replicate that. I got to tell you something. That's a non-superstar team. That's a really, really good baseball team. I'll be curious to see if Murphy thinks that's the way that maybe some teams better be thinking about it. Don't pay big-time home run hitters. Maybe you actually just pay guys who can play baseball day in and day out.
Yeah, the game of baseball the way it used to be, sort of a throwback team. I like it. I mean, look, and they're a fun team, and they've got pitching, like you said. But yesterday, I think one of the biggest stories was Snit's update on all of the injuries. Now, first of all, Austin Riley, I think he'll be fine once he comes back from the IL. It might take a couple days after that, but when we talked to him, it just sort of seemed like he re-aggravated it. He actually did it in the mud on Saturday night, and then he got worse on that dive. But Chris Sale threw a side session. Swelly is not throwing. Ronaldo Lopez is playing catch. There's a lot to get into there. Reading between the lines, Swelly is probably not going to pitch again this year. I don't think that is much of a surprise. But Sale throwing a bullpen, a side session, is a little interesting because to me it says, hey, not only is he getting healthy with that rib, or those ribs, I guess it's 2 of them, but he's also looking at coming back relatively soon, or at least in September. So that's obviously something that he has control of. If he says he wants to pitch, he's going to pitch. And it certainly looks like he's getting ready for a return probably in September.
Well, if he pitches, he's not a guy that I'm going to look at and go, he's taking a start away from somebody else who needs to be seen up here, because I think Chris Sale is probably just trying to line up his offseason to do what he has to do this offseason. And maybe pitching a few times in September puts him more at ease as to what his offseason is going to be, a little bit more realistic in terms of I pitched, I put it down, I take my time, then I crank it up again without having to worry about any lingering effects. I mean, the good news is, quite honestly, as dumb as the injury was, as bad as it is, and how stupid it looked, it's a break, and breaks do heal. As long as he didn't have cartilage damage, as long as he didn't do anything else. I've had broken ribs, and the idea of what you're able to do from breathing to tying your shoes to moving around, once they get better, though, it gets better. Now he's just got to get his arm. I think what we take out of that is He's just got to get his arm ready to pitch. His body is ready to pitch. There's no lingering effects of the ribs. I told you with Ronaldo Lopez, a shoulder, I don't buy anything anybody tells me until I actually see the guy. Schwellenbach, I don't think there's a reason to have him come back. I wish it was more of in line where he could have pitched the month of September. Same thing. He has more of a natural off season. I'm not sure we're going to get that. Everything else is, everything else hinders around. When does Waldrep get a start? I'll say this about Fetty. Now, I have no idea if they have any plans beyond this. Do they think he's fixable? Do they think he can get him instead of 4 runs in 5 innings down to 3? Viable back-end guy if it doesn't cost you a lot of money? Maybe. He's a veteran. I'm not spending that $13 million on a 1-year deal for a veteran that I'm not sure if he's going to break down or not. Maybe this guy becomes viable in that regard. The pitching is going to be really interesting as to who ends up in Northport under what type of deal. And if, again, I think you and I both agree, I think they have to sign a top 3 type guy, but it'll be curious to see if they get out of what we know is their comfort zone to go extend a pitcher like that.
And with Smith-Shawver and Holmes, first of all, with Smith-Shawver, we talked to him about a month or so ago. And, since we haven't heard a lot from him, I would imagine the Tommy John recovery is still on track. And if we see him next year, it'll be late. But Grant Holmes not electing to get surgery. He talked to 2 different professionals about this, got 2 different opinions, and he's going to try to go without surgery, which is interesting to me because there really had not been confirmation on an internal brace or regular Tommy John. So if I can get inside of Grant Holmes' head a little bit, it's unlikely that he's going to pitch again next year if he does have any surgery. So if he wants to give it a go for a couple of months to see if things work out, if he can avoid it, I don't have a problem with that because I never really expected to see him next year anyway. Because of just the timing.
Yeah, my guess is he got more than 2 opinions. I think guys hunt and peck to get the opinion they want to hear, and if it takes 5 guys, you go to 5 guys, and maybe the 5th guy says, "I'm not sure you need surgery." I don't know, and I talked about it yesterday. I don't know what the results are for guys who are told, "You're a candidate to get a surgery. Do you want to or not?" With a little bit of choice. Sometimes it's just a tear. You're going to get surgery. Sometimes it's we can brace this thing. And now we're trying to get results some documentation as to what that means and how long that's supposed to take. And Spencer Strider right here on his own team is a guy that he could saddle up to and ask him about it, which is probably good. The next part is, can I just lay out for a couple of months, try to do whatever it is? And there's treatments. It's not just sitting there. I'm assuming, I don't know if you do the blood spinning. I don't know if you do stem cell. I don't know what you might do, but I don't think you're just sitting there waiting for it to heal, and then wait for your birthday and blow candles out on a cake and wish for it again. I think there's probably procedurally things that we don't necessarily know about, but I don't know how many guys, given a choice, how many don't do the surgery and come back to pitch. My problem with that is, am I always having that hang over my head? And I know that you can have a surgery and you can have that hang over your head because it could happen again, but I'm curious to see if Grant Holmes is willing to. Look, the guy didn't pitch for 10 years. The guy watched 10 years of his life not pitching in the major leagues. I understand why he doesn't want to just give up a year next year. The thing is, I don't know if procedurally he'll be able to go out with the confidence he needs, and then the team will rely on him to be a viable option if everybody's waiting for the shoe to drop and maybe it's not going to work out for him. It's a tough thing because I'll tell you where he'll be really hacked off. Let's just say he doesn't have the surgery. He ends up in Northport and something happens down there, and it's by the way, you don't have an option now. I don't know. If you're going to miss the season, you're going to miss the season. But what you'd like to do is if you have the surgery now, maybe at the back end of the year, you can come pitch a little bit just, again, to try to create a little bit of normalcy. He's in a bad spot. When you miss 10 years of your livelihood not pitching in Major League Baseball, my guess is he just doesn't want to throw another one away when there's a hope that maybe he doesn't have to.
Yeah, look, he's getting up there in age, so you don't want to lose one of your last ones. So 100% agree. Now, Joey Wentz going for the Braves tonight. Bryce Elder a couple days from now. I know Strider's in the mix, or Strider is in between, but I think for me, it's just finding out about some of these guys. What do you have? Are you a candidate for the 2026 Atlanta Braves? And here's Joey Wentz, who has been unbelievable for the Braves this year. I think it's an 0.72 whip. Opponents are batting 123 against him while he's been with the Braves. Another audition for him. Are you going to be a candidate? Can you provide organizational depth? Are you going to be good enough where you can pitch somewhere else next year? Excited to see what Joey Wentz does, and excited to see if Bryce Elder can build off a performance last time out, which is okay. Of course, that's coming later in the week. You have to find, Chris, you have to find these small little wins, these small little battles to focus on, because obviously we know overall the Braves are not going to go to the playoffs. So there are still interesting storylines. Joey Wentz tonight is one that I'm really excited to see.
Let's just go with 30 teams, back-end guy, number 5 starter, because you're going to need 9, 10, 11, 12. The Braves might be up to 15 different guys have started games for them now. I'll look at it later today. But let's just say the last guy in every staff, 30 guys. Really not a lot of teams are set. So we talk about 120 that might have a job going into spring training in some way, shape, or form. There's 30 spots open. Now, whether it's here, whether it's someplace else, Joey Wentz is looking for a career revitalization. And maybe it does happen here. Maybe he actually is comfortable here. Maybe he and Rick Kranitz are in a nice little place. Maybe he likes the catchers. Maybe he's a low-cost option to be the back-end guy. And he's got now a little bit less than 2 months to maybe solidify the idea that he walks into camp as a 5. That part is interesting, because I would love to not have to do the 1-year, $13 million deal for a 35-year-old guy, which has been the contract that a lot of people have dealt with. I'd like to have a guy at less than $1 million or whatever the hell Joey Wentz is, and I could spend the money someplace else, i.e. on maybe a top 3 type starter, where I just pool as much money as I possibly can to get that 5 or 6 year deal and make it as comfortable as possible if the Braves have to sign somebody. Look, Ranger Suarez, Framber Valdez, I started naming guys that are the pie in the sky guys, because at a certain point, how much money are they really going to spend on a longer term deal for a pitcher? They just haven't done it very often. So I don't know if they're going to break code. Maybe this year we'll actually have them do that, or at least think about it. Maybe there'll be deferrals. Maybe there'll be an opt-out. Maybe there'll be a no-trade clause. It's going to be interesting to see if they have to make concessions to maybe play in a different pool this offseason.
And then Hurston Waldrep, I think, we finally got to see what the hype was all about in a very odd spot coming up to Bristol that morning. He's going to be back. Obviously, he had to be returned because he was the 27th man. I think there's no doubt he's going to be back, and another guy to throw in that mix. So, again, he's the number 4 overall prospect. He pitched his way into another shot, or at least one more shot this year. And I think for the 2026 Braves, he better be part of it. He's supposed to be part of it. I'm talking as organizational depth and being one of those guys.
Yeah, but at a certain point, you're either going to get kicked out of the nest and you're going to find out if you can pitch in a major league or not. My problem is if you tell me Sale, Strider, Waldrep, Wentz, Fetty going into next year, I got to be honest.
That's not okay.
No, it's not okay. So I don't think everybody gets to dance. There aren't enough chairs. I think there's a spot. I do. I think there's a spot. I think one spot has got to be taken up by a free agent acquisition this year or a trade acquisition in the offseason. Let's go either way. I don't care about a top 3 guy. But best I can tell right now, who would you have? Let's just say Sale comes back. He's fine. It's the ribs. It's not an arm problem. Him, Strider. And if I put those 3 guys behind him, because who else am I missing? Am I missing anybody? If those are my options, I'm not feeling good breaking camp next year going, oh, no, they all proved that they can pitch up here. Look, Eric Fetty's alive again. Waldrep is ready to go, and Joey Wentz, my God, what a great story. Yeah, I don't need nice stories anymore. Like one of those guys, if it's a game of musical pitching chairs, one of those guys has a chance. Somebody's got a chance to win a spot next year. But if it's 2 and 3 of them, then something wasn't done this offseason. Either that or you're going to buy 2 thumpers and you're just going to try to win 9-8. Because there are going to be a lot of starts, including Spencer Strider's, by the way, that might not be what he was a couple of years ago when he won as many games as he did.
Yeah, well, for sure. I think for a lot of these guys, though, is they'll go in. I think for Waldrep, because he's such a highly touted, drafted high, all that stuff, that he's going to kind of go in, if he continues to pitch the way he did in Bristol, kind of in that A.J. Smith-Schauber camp that was past offseason where, okay, he's got a lot of hype. He's got a cup of coffee up in the majors. He's had some success. Can he pitch his way into a starting role?
It would be the best case scenario.
Did that? It would be exactly.
He wins that job.
Scenario.
He wins that job. It's a best case scenario. You got it right with the draft pick, and he's viable. And I'm not asking him to be a 2. I'm asking him to be the back end guy. And let's find out if somewhere in the not too distant future, Chris Sale, 37 years old, and whatever else might be going on around here, does he work his way up the latter. I joked with you that when all 5 of those guys went down, and I think what it was Bryce Elder slotted as your number 2, I almost fell out of my chair. I mean, just even hearing that. It's positionless when you get to this point. With Sale out, let's just call it Strider and a bunch of guys, and I don't know who's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because that's how deep we're probably going to go, especially when the call-ups come. But I'm sort of my analogy was to the NBA. There's no more positions in the NBA. I don't have a staff where I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll give Spencer Strider the benefit of the doubt. I say he's 1, and then everybody else is sort of vying. And I don't know. It's Spencer Strider's going to get an extra day off. We're already playing that game before the season ends. I mean, that's happening this week and will happen, I think, with an off day. So they're already thinking about Spencer Strider having a couple of extra off days this season before we get to the end, and I kind of don't blame him. I don't want him frustrated pitching. I don't want him actually trying to do too much. I think he's at the point where he's not happy with himself, and I don't want him to get out of the mindset that I think he has, where it's just tonight, pitch the game that you can pitch. I hear some things from him, and I get a little bit nervous of, is he going to go try to win 3 games on a given night? And that, I don't want to say that about him because I know he's smarter than that, but the frustration he has with himself, it seems to be at a point that I've never really heard it.
All right, we'll see what happens tonight. Joey Wentz on the mound. We got Strider tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens in the 4-game set against the Marlins. He's Chris Dimino. I'm Barrett Sallee. This has been Braves Central. Subscribe, review, share it with your friends. We'll talk to you soon.